Welcome to IB Unplugged, a Cognity podcast for IBDP educators that tackles your submitted questions and challenges by connecting you with experts and peers who share their ideas and stories from real classrooms.
It's right there. You just have to press record. Although, props to getting everybody's attention for a while. That worked out really well.
Well, Katie looked like she was doing something like ready.
I'm very focused. Let's get this right, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. It's John and Court here. And we started a podcast a while ago. And now we've gotten to the close of season 1.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Okay, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about season 1, some of the stuff that we did. Well, I guess first off, we had an aim of trying to do something that would be useful for IB educators across the community. Mm-hmm. And I guess before we kind of think about each episode that we've done, how do you feel? How's it gone? Is it meeting our aims?
I think so. I think it's been a really great group of people. And I think that we've realized really quickly that we can do our best, but if we don't have a good guest, we can only go so far.
Yeah, so good luck right now. No guest, it's just the two of us. And we can only go so far with this episode.
Exactly. So good thing we can talk about everyone else that's been here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we kind of naturally had a really good group of people where all of their ideas, it was really different topics each time, but I felt like there were certain key themes that we kind of were able to keep coming back to. I think it was really nice that in every episode there was some of those nice conversations that you want to be able to have in the education space, but still also feel like there was some value coming from it as well.
Yeah.
And some really practical pieces. I think we've heard from quite a few people that you've appreciated the conversations and have appreciated this structure of a way of listening to and consuming content as opposed to maybe some of the more traditional ways.
Yeah. I remember we were talking a lot about how you can get a lot of good information from a workshop or a webinar or something like this, but this just sort of transformed the media a little bit so that you could get really valuable stuff that you could action right away, but at your own pace and kind of whenever you wanted it. And I know for me, even just with a small commute walking to school, it was nice to listen to things and kind of go back and be like, oh yeah, we talked about that thing. And I do want to do that right now.
Yeah.
And it's been a really cool transformative approach to the way that we approach, at least for me, approaching my teaching, approaching our policy development, the stuff that we talk about both at a senior leadership team level as well as what I'm doing with my students. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. The variety of guests has been really great. And we couldn't be more thankful for the guests who took their time to join us and chat with us, share their ideas and share those with the rest of the community here. So let's talk about each of those guests that we got to speak with.
Yeah.
We opened with David Spooner, right?
Yes,
with the demystifying TOK. Yeah. Why David? Why did you want to start with David?
Yeah, I mean, all of the guests were great, and we're not picking favorites, but when we were...
But we are, and we're no, just kidding.
No, when we were looking at the list of people we wanted to talk to, David's somebody that I've worked with time and time again, that we've gotten so much positive feedback from all of his workshops and webinars, and I think that part of it is this idea that he has such a good way. It's really funny talking about someone behind their back, by the way.
Yeah, we're just gossiping right now.
We're gossiping.
We're just saying all sorts of things. They have no chance to defend themselves.
No, exactly. It's perfect. No, he had such a good way of I have all of this experience. I've learned so much, and you can see how deeply the TOK course has been embedded into his way of thinking about education. But instead of that becoming this really daunting, lofty way of teaching, it's no, you guys are overthinking this. It's not as hard as it looks. It's not as mystical. Exactly. That was a really intentional word. It's no, let's just have intentional questions and conversations with students, and it's going to be okay is kind of the message he always gives when he's talking about TOK, especially for new teachers. It's it's going to be fine. It's not that hard. And I think it was a really nice opening to the podcast.
No, definitely so. When I think about when I first started as an IBDP teacher, this idea of TOK was just so foreign to me, and it was really outside of it. And I knew we had these little spots in our course guides of hey, here's a TOK thing that you can call out. Yeah. And I remember even in my first few times, I would highlight it, be oh, TOK moment, everybody. Let's kind of shift gears from biology to TOK. But what I really loved about what David was talking about is how easily you can integrate TOK style thinking into the way that you're teaching and learning now. And as, from that episode, I've really shifted the way that I teach my lessons from, instead of being like, let's like pivot and change gears here, to more, how do we actually know this particular thing? And really just kind of having that constantly in the back of my head, and really helping the students to try to appreciate that more too. So even if we're talking about, I don't know, nucleotides, DNA theory, or like transcription translation, like, how do you think we came to know this sort of stuff?
You had to name drop all these biology things.
Well, I need people to actually know that I'm a biology teacher, not a chemistry teacher or anything else. So I just got to throw that in there, don't I?
Yeah.
But yeah, all those things to just really get the students to ask that question that I think is perpetually there for TOK, which is like, how do I really know that? And what knowledge structures made that possible for me? And I think when you take it from that lens, it makes this whole TOK idea far more approachable, far more accessible as any type of subject teacher that you might be. Yeah. Lots that I think I gained from that particular episode that were really good.
Yeah, good. Next up was Wakanye with the indigenous knowledge systems and AI. Yeah.
I loved speaking with Wakanye. I felt like there was just there was a good connection with her.
Yeah. Hopefully she feels the same.
She's like, I had enough time talking with John. I'm done.
Hasn't returned your email since.
No, exactly. I'm like, hey, let's be friends.
Yeah.
No, I just thought, because I went in there with kind of a pretty naive understanding of AI, really, in terms of how it's produced and the biases that exist. And I remember I even asked the question, now I look back and I laugh, but I was like, what do you mean when you say ethical approaches to AI? I was like, it's just information. And it was so enlightening to have her really talk about, like, no, these AI is being informed by certain groups of people, and therefore their judgments, their ideas are going to be coming through there as well. So there's a couple things we can do with that. One is critically evaluate that knowledge that's being presented to us, really think critically about, what questions am I actually asking AI? Is this actually an AI-able thing that I need? Or can I just like do this on my own? AI-able, those are a new word. Can I just do this actually on my own? Do I really need AI to summarize this stuff? But then the second thing I thought was really useful is you can create your own sort of small language model. And so when you think as a school, this is our mission, these are our values, like let's create sort of our own chatbot for our school that helps to reflect our particular cultures, and that small language model can be a little bit more beneficial than a large language model. And I really hadn't thought of that. I thought of it being too narrow-minded, but the way that she expanded on that really helped me understand that has so much value to bringing up the mission, the vision, the values of your culture, and helping people understand that particular place. And then you can evaluate all the other small language models as well.
Yeah, I agree. When I was thinking about it in the Cognity context, I was thinking about our product teams have been so intentional over the years in picking the right authors and designing the right course, and like every aspect of content development has been so intentional to make sure that it's genuinely global and international. We're having diverse voices that are, so it's not everyone's coming from the same place with the same experience. It's, do you teach in, what kind of schools do you teach in?
Right.
All these things that are really carefully crafted to be able to make a resource that supports students globally, which is what we do.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to be really careful that we're doing the same thing with AI, because we can't assume that it's global. There are all of those biases that you need to be really intentional about when you're prompting. And I think that, it's really an important lens to always have switched on when you're using AI, especially in education.
Yeah, it really implores us to think critically about, are we truly doing something that's an intercultural understanding? Are we developing intercultural understanding, or are we highlighting one particular framework?
Yeah.
So that was really enlightening episode, I think, for sure.
Yeah. Let's jump back to Lance.
Come on. Lance was great, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was.
I can't think of Lance's episode without thinking of juggling.
I know. Or just like picturing him going through that airport with the bag of juggling balls.
Like a whole bag of juggling balls getting stopped at.
Exactly.
But obviously talking a lot about building resilience. And I think that the thing that really stood out for me from that episode was this idea, or this concept of like failing well.
Yeah.
How important it is to create safe spaces for failure for students, and helping them understand that like failure is not just like important, but it's crucial to learning. And so as educators, I think we really have to be intentional about creating those spaces where students fail in a safe space.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things that is so much easier said than done with the IB in particular, because all the external pressures, right? Like it's a hard conversation to have with a parent of like, yeah, but they failed so well. Like,
your kid was the best at failing. They get the number one failing part.
Exactly. So good at it. But, they are expecting the students to succeed in their grades and things like that. And I think you can, there are things like formative assessment and blah, blah, blah that you can do. But I think it's really important that they can have an actual learning from the actual feeling of failure, but there's also this pressure that a student is going to freak out if they fail in the traditional sense. If they are not doing what they assume is well and what they've been ingrained to think of as well, that's also going to really impact their confidence. And there's so much around building the culture of embracing failure and building the resilience that comes from it that I think you have to do a lot of work in the school to create that culture where it's normal to fail. I mean, grade system, like for me, when I did my master's degree in the UK.
You did your master's degree in every subject possible.
No. But I did my regular university studies in the US, and it's where you'd have like a 90% is an A, and you generally are aiming for an A.
Yeah.
But then I got to the UK and I submitted my first essay, and I don't remember exactly how it came out, but it was like the grade came out to like a 60% or something. And I'm like,
I gotta
failing. Move back home to America.
I gotta go back. It's too hard.
It's too hard here. Yeah. And then I went and I went to the office hours, and I'm so stressed. And I'm like, this is maybe revealing too much of how lame of a student I was.
I'm having a great time.
But I was so stressed, and I go to the office hours, and I have the Scottish professor that I can't really understand super well. So I'm like ready to really listen in here. And I'm just like, what did I do wrong? They're like,
this is good.
Yeah. Like, I don't really have any feedback for you. And I'm like, but I failed.
Yeah, but there's 40% of this that I don't know.
Yeah. So I think creating the culture of defining what means you're doing well in a class and learning that's separate from what a traditional
what it might be
model
measured as and some sort of quantifiable. And I think that really stood out is this like intentional scaffolding of qualitative measurements for how students are doing. Yeah. And the other thing that really stood out to me is this, like, he spoke a lot about mindset and helping students understand, like, no, you can do things that you previously thought you couldn't. And I think that's where the whole juggling thing came up from, right?
Yeah.
But this general idea of we need to help students understand that you're not just following a formulaic model of like, here, I get this information, you memorize this information, I tell people I know it, and therefore I get this grade, but more of like engage with the deep, difficult work of learning process. Yeah. And I know for me in my own teaching now, I've really thought deeply of like, how can I create those safe failure structures? And in biology, it's actually pretty easy. Like when you get to some of the practical work, often some of that practical work doesn't go as expected. Okay. And so it's shifted the way I looked at that quite a bit, because now I see that as such a good opportunity for students to see like, oh, my data didn't come out the way I wanted it to, or this analysis didn't work out to support my hypothesis or something like that. And just really driving through the idea of like, but that's still useful data. Even if it doesn't support your hypothesis, it still comes in a good way. And so even just like pivoting just slightly and saying like, maybe you didn't fail, but this idea of an experiment not going the way that you wanted it to is still very, very useful. For me, created a soft cushion to like get then to the space of like, and when you fail, when you mess things up, it's not the end of the world. It's actually still very useful in the learning process. Let's talk about how you learned it, what your assumptions were, and how we can go forward on that. So super, super useful stuff that came out of that one, I think, for sure.
Agreed. Next up was Clara. She was talking about AI governance in education. And I was thinking about Wakanye's and Clara's episodes kind of in tandem, because there were some similarities there. And I think with Clara, it was a lot about like just being mindful of what you're doing. Like just because you can have it doesn't necessarily mean you should.
Don't
like
just sprint because you can.
Exactly. Like how do we think critically about what we're doing? How do we, just like in any ed tech, like don't just introduce things because you got a freemium account with it.
Right.
How do you be careful?
Yeah. Well, and I know you guys at Cognity have done this as well. I mean, some people might have criticized and been like, why hasn't Cognity just jumped on the AI chatbot bandwagon thing? You know, what made you at Cognity kind of hold back, I guess?
Yeah, I think that it is part of this, of the natural responsibility and importance of an integrity of being a provider that's trusted with student data and trusted with a student's learning, and how do we really carefully preserve that trust and keep a safe space for students? How do we make sure that we're building something? Like I said, we've spent so much time building out our learning principles and our learning models and working with the way that students are learning, that if we just rush into throwing in artificial intelligence, then it could take away from the integrity of the product.
Yeah.
It's something that we are doing and moving forward with, and I'm really excited about the future ways of working with assessment with the enhancement of AI. But I do think that what she was really talking about, of like, how do you evaluate these AI tools as a school, and making sure your policies are in check. And it's something that we want to make sure that as we develop from the ed tech side, we're really working with the schools that use Cognity to maintain that trust, maintain that relationship, and make sure that we're actually really intentionally embedding AI in the ways that we work.
Got so much respect for that, because I think there are many people who would just jump on and say, well, here's this tool, use this tool, without actually like check the rules of this thing as well, like the guidelines here and the what you're committing to. And in some cases, it's like most of your students aren't even old enough to access this platform or what's actually happening to their data on the backside of this. And I think Clara really revealed a lot of that and helped me understand more about, like, don't just automatically jump to an AI thing. Yeah. In many cases, probably entirely unethical to do that with students of this particular age. Yeah. So one, there was that aspect, but I think the other thing that was really useful is this idea of like using AI to enhance the learning process, which you were just talking about now with like Cognity itself. Not to replace educator judgment, but to enhance educator judgment and help us have a better idea of what we can do. So I think, just as you say, Cognity's done some really smart things here, I think, with regard to like holding back on just, let's not run yet. Let's just be sure that we're still a provider people can trust, and we're doing the right thing in that respect. And I think that was emphasized in Clara's episode as well quite a bit. Yeah. Afterward, we got into a chat with Jen.
Yeah, I love Jen.
I love Jen. Especially, poor thing, we had such a trouble getting that thing started, right? There was like all these connection issues, and her equipment wasn't working, and we finally got to like use.
She was upside down.
She was upside down at one point. We were having a great time. Yeah. No, we finally got it working with like her phone and that sort of thing, and then her cat was in the background.
And her cat was pissed.
Yeah, cat was not happy.
We had to cut parts because the cat was screaming.
Yeah. Well, cats aside, I think what was really useful about that one was we spoke a lot about like the inquiry upon results, or the EUR process. And when I think back to Lance's episode, Lance was more about like failing well for students. And I think Jen was like how to fail well as teachers. Yeah. And recognizing that the inquiry upon results process is actually super useful for us. Yeah.
You weren't convinced in the beginning.
No, I was like, we're having to talk about EURs. Like,
you're like, I don't use them.
Come on. Why do this? And then it was just really, it was revealing and humbling, I guess, at the same time, to recognize like, we always ask students to reflect on their tests, to see how they're doing, to find their mistakes and make them better. And that's exactly what we as educators can be doing with the EURs. And we should be. Like, we should get our EURs, take a look at them, see like, oh, this student answered this way versus what they could have done in this respect. And that reshapes how you think as a teacher as well. Yeah. But it was really clear that you have to have like a culture of that too. Jen really emphasized that it can't be, I don't know, like a performance metric or something that like, you want to hold accountability, but you don't want to like, okay, your job depends on this particular thing. It's more of you need a culture where feedback is valued. So it's a culture of reflection rather than just reacting and saying like, oh, we didn't do this well, and therefore I'm a bad teacher. Yeah. But like, let me reflect on this in an honest way.
No, exactly. There's this way of approaching feedback, and it's called radical candor. I don't know if you've heard about it. And it's like a quadrant, and radical candor means like you're able to give feedback and a really authentic way that's very honest, but you still have this building of trust that has to come first. And so it's like, if you give a lot of feedback, but they don't trust good intention, then it's obnoxious aggression. You don't want that. If you don't give any feedback at all and but you have a lot of empathy, then it's like, oh God, I should have thought about this beforehand.
Yeah, honestly, you're really looking bad right now.
Yeah. Whatever. It's like this idea of like empathetic ruin, something like that. Of like, I'm just so nice to you that it's actually hurting you.
Right.
But it's like getting that sweet spot there. And I think that that's such an important part of the culture of the school to be able to say, we're gonna be really upfront about like, these are the things that you didn't do well or that your students struggled with.
Right.
But we're not going to fire you because we've like, it's okay for you to acknowledge the things that you didn't do well.
And we should acknowledge that too, right? Let me just call that out so that I can get better. Like it's that lifelong learner approach, right?
Exactly. So it's like, it is such, she really emphasized that culture building. And I think that's something that she does really well as a school leader, is really building the relationships amongst the colleagues. So it's also that if you have two biology teachers, they're not competing with each other of like, I can't admit that I totally bombed this part. It's like, hey, I totally bombed this part. How did you do it so I can learn from you? And nobody being scared of admitting any of these things.
Yeah. One thing that really stood out is like, you could turn a moment of disappointment into a springboard for better outcomes. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about here with that corporate speak of radical candor. Oh, goodness. Damien's episode.
Yes.
Damien, we spoke a lot about like blended learning. And I think, for me, I went into it honestly not really knowing the difference between blended learning and flipped learning.
Okay.
For me, I was kind of like, oh, these are similar things. Like we're just talking about flipped learning.
So for half the episode, you were just pretending to understand.
That's what I do most of the time. No, it was good to really recognize, oh no, this is truly what blended learning looks like. And I was actually quite envious of the space he's been able to create.
Yeah.
It seems like they've really been able to kind of chop the timetable dictates what happens around here, you know? And sometimes that can happen in any school. You're like, here we have these great ideas, but ultimately it's got to be fitting into the timetable. And, you know, when they've got studio time and they've got all these other spaces that allow the students to have truly self-directed study with teachers there, not just facilitating or like sitting on the back writing their emails, but rather like involved in the process, but more the actual guide on the side. That really inspired me a ton. And that's actually...
I'm picturing that you like went home to Andre and you're like, I'm gonna open up my own school. It's time.
Seriously, now's the time.
I'm gonna do this.
No, I did go to the head of the science department right away, and I was like, "Look, I have to redo everything. I'm changing all of this right now." And he was like, "This sounds like an interesting conversation we should have later. Like we should dive into this in more detail." But no, I love the idea of let's have like a bit of a time for a particular lecture, but then let's very intentionally bring out some studio space. You have to scaffold in, here are the objectives we want to have, here's like some assessment, here's how I'm going to get some feedback. But it doesn't mean that it has to be the same time for everybody. And it allows students to kind of self-pace. And at the same time, it kind of gives more flexibility for them to choose what they love. And, you know, my mind just kind of went, you know, I exploded into this creativity of like, oh, if I frame it around a case study or different things here, then students can kind of go in their direction. So it's actually made me really excited for the planning period here before I get started in the next academic year with how to like shift things around. And obviously like Courtney makes a massive difference on that because if I want to have true blended learning with student-led sort of stuff, I need to have a resource that allows them to self-check, allows them to move forward. And I guess like that lends itself quite a bit to like the product you've created and what you guys are doing here at Courtney.
Yeah. We do a lot of training and professional development, and we really try to bring in use cases of like, these are the ways that we think Courtney works best in your practices. And flipped learning has always been one of those core, like we work really well with flipped learning. It all just makes sense, like the way that you do the assignments and all of that. And then when he's talking about blended learning, I'm like, you're going to open up your school and I'm going to product team. I'm like, this is the thing. Like,
this is the thing.
This is the thing. I really, really like the idea of having space for students. Like, it's not forcing student-led space in the classroom that you're having to fight against. It's like, no, this is the time for them to do their own thing. And it makes perfect sense.
Well, and then Courtney becomes like the vehicle for that to take place. Because if I didn't have something like that resource, I would wonder, okay, so I need to now create a bunch of different questions and I need to create a bunch of different ways like students can get a checkpoint. How am I going to feedback on each individual person at the same time? Whereas this obviously allows them to self-check and progress at their own speed. And then it changes the benchmarks or the sort of checkpoints that I'm making along the way. So I think that's a lot easier. So with those, you know, with the chat with Damien, as well as this resource with Courtney, it's really helped me explore what will possibly be more effective, possibly more energetic, and hopefully more meaningful lessons with my students as well. Yeah.
Becoming a better IBDP educator is a daily practice informed through reading, research, personal experience, and episodes from IB Unplugged, like the one you're listening to right now. But sometimes the show can go a bit too quickly, or we simply forget some of the key points once we're out of the car or back from our walk. So to revisit the content in a condensed version, you can download the episode summary at cognity.com/IB Unplugged. You'll find useful links to other resources and exciting bits of information that you can use immediately in your daily practice. So now, back to the show. Cool.
We spoke with, I'm going to say Junita because she told me to say Junita.
Yeah.
Can we talk about this? I was like, how do I pronounce your name? She said Junita. And then all throughout the episode, everybody was saying Unita. And I felt dumb.
I'm sorry. To either Unita or Junita, we will clarify and get back to you. But
you're not sorry about me feeling dumb.
No.
Okay.
That was clear.
That's usual.
Yeah. We talked about mental health and well-being in the IB, and when she had such a powerful why in her education. I laughed. She was like, my dad made me do it. Yeah. And then, but then as she kind of talked about her journey, and I'm like, yeah, you've had a really profound career in education, and you've really been able to help some students and student communities that really needed such an empathetic teacher. And like, you can tell that she shows up.
Well, she spoke about like the trauma training and things that she went through as well. And some of the stuff that she spoke about, I was like, well, that's not what I'm dealing with. That's a little bit heavier, deeper kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think what really stood out is she spoke a lot about being perceptive,
you
know, like noticing the small changes, things that might shift within your students. And that requires you knowing your students well. And just building up those relationships and all the small moments, like before a lesson starts, after the lesson takes place, noticing if a student doesn't want to raise their hand when they normally do, just like, you don't have to call it out right then, but catch them later on. Hey, like, what's going on? What's happening with you? Are you comfortable sharing with me?
Yeah.
And recognizing that sometimes you might not be the main person they want to share with.
Right.
But even just calling out and like helping somebody know, like, I notice you.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it makes a big difference, right?
Yeah. And I do think that there is such an emotional load for a teacher that can be really hard of like, if you're having a bad day as a teacher and then you have a student coming in and they're super upset and they're angry and not showing up the way that you want them to in the class, and it's because they got into a fight with their boyfriend. And it's like, if you're already not on a level space, it's hard to create the right empathy for the student, because for that student, this is the worst thing that could have happened in their day.
Right.
And when you're in a good place, you can really resonate with that.
Sure.
But if you're not in a good place, you're like,
leave me alone. Don't talk to me.
Yeah, get over it. And no, so I think just that you have to take care of yourself as a teacher to be able to take care of your students, and really also as a school, and building again the culture of we're not expecting you to be perfect every single day. And we acknowledge that there are certain days that are great for lesson planning, and there are certain days that are great for hiding in the back office until the day's over when you're not teaching.
Yeah.
And you need to take care of that. You can't always be completely switched on all the time. Right.
Yeah, I love she spoke about moving the vocabulary from work-life balance to work-life harmony. Yeah. And I thought that was a really nice way of putting it, because it doesn't, work-life balance sort of implies that they're both going to equal each other, but they're not. No. They're not always going to equal each other. And you know, commonly as a teacher, you kind of like do some work before you go to work so that work works better, so that when you leave work, you can do more work to be ready for the next day to go to work. And this idea of like, there's this constant movement of what you're doing with an education, but you know, work-life balance probably isn't the right term. Rather, work-life harmony, and looking after yourself, but creating a culture, as you say, where people feel comfortable and where you look out for one another along the way. I think that was a really powerful message for any educator, and especially recognizing like there are times of the year where it's worse than others. And you know, sometimes if you're feeling down, there might be a chance somebody else is as well. Yeah. So look after one another, right? Yeah.
Next up was Matt, who's also someone I've had the pleasure of working with for quite a long time. And now he's been setting up his deep learning course. And I think it was the most clear. We talk about the soft skills and how important they are in most of the episodes.
Yeah.
And I loved him being like, right, it's important. And here's what we did about it.
Yeah.
And here's how we have put this in the forefront and a core component of the way that we operate as a school.
There was a real structure to how they scaffold prioritizing process over product, right? And that the product really didn't matter so much as the process of thinking about why they chose this thing, the metacognitive things, as well as the affective skills, like how did you work in a group? The point of what we're doing right now is to see how well you collaborate or how well you communicated this thing. And really, just as you say, that was the most clear way of how you can structure that without kind of seeing it as a bolt-on or as like a implicit learning. And I think sometimes we think of the approaches to learning as if I just do some great teaching, then they're going to learn collaboration, they're going to learn thinking skills, they're going to learn their social skills. But this flipped it and just said like, no, we're going to focus on process. And he gave some really practical tips on how to do that. He showed us with like the Harkness style discussions or student evaluations, how you can really help students think more about process, think more about soft skills as opposed to product. And that I think is super powerful. And there's lots of places for that in the GP. You know, there's obviously like collaborative sciences project and the way that we approach teaching and learning. And you think like the way the syllabus or the guides are set out is to try to emphasize those things. But I just really thought he's putting it into practice right away with that deep learning course. And there was a lot that you could take from that one for sure.
I agree. I think the last thing I want to say on that one is that I've brought up maybe 5 times now about the brave space instead of a safe space and how much that applies to so many different contexts of how important it is to not just coddle either students or people or whatever, but and be like, it's okay, everything's fine. But it's like, no, but you've got to go do something now and you've got to go be brave. I'm going to create the conditions for a brave approach to learning or a brave approach to working or whatever. I really like that.
It's constantly in my head. This isn't a safe space. This is a brave space. This isn't, and that I love that. It's really, really good stuff. Yeah. We got to speak with Richard Jones about the double diploma, right? And doing both the Swiss maturity as well as the IB diploma. It just puts so much in perspective for me. Like you often think like, oh, the IB has so much content. Got to get through all this stuff.
Exactly.
And then he's like, guess what? We do that and the Swiss maturity.
Which has way more content than the IB. It's like, oh, the IB is the fluffy one. Like the maturity is the one that has like the deep, like intensive, long list of content they have to get through.
Yeah, right? Over quite a bit of time too. Yeah, there was a big thing. He mentioned this idea of like, students or children who grow up in bilingual households are able to separate the object from the name of the object better because they understand that this object has 2 different names that allows the children to have like a better understanding of what that thing is. And he used that as a metaphor to speak about like students who do both the Swiss maturity and the IB diploma, and that it allowed them to think about knowledge in much better ways, to understand like the way I'm gaining knowledge in the Swiss maturity is different to the way that I'm thinking about that knowledge in the IB program itself. And so you could really see how students would get such a benefit in that, because really when we talk about things like theory of knowledge or how we value one type of knowledge system over another, that if you've got both that are somewhat they obviously are common knowledge, but they have such a dichotomy, it helps students really see the differences between those two and helps them appreciate them better as well.
Yeah, I think it was a really positive way of looking at where a lot of schools probably do have to, maybe not to the same extent, have a dual diploma there, but they're still going to have national requirements. And instead of always seeing them as being at odds or at tension, it's more like, what is the opportunity here? That
live in
we
that
have
tension.
the advantage by having both of these.
Yeah. And when you're in that tension, it can be really useful. I like that. That was good stuff. Fidelis's episode was cool.
Feels like meeting a celebrity.
Honest, I was a little bit starstruck. It's like, oh, look at this. We got, director of curriculum development at the IB. And it was really cool. But beyond that, I think it was so enlightening to talk about like the curriculum development process. And I think naively, there was a part of me that just thought like, oh, they refresh their curriculum every 7 years because they want everybody to go to their workshops or something like this. But no, it was far more than that, obviously. And it was just like, it's a reactive, responsive, dynamic curriculum where they really value feedback and where they really are looking for feedback. And so,
and not in a like superficial way.
Right.
It was really like, no, we talk to students because it actually changes the way we do things.
Yeah. And then just things that she was speaking about with regard to like, we want to reduce content, we want to increase concepts, and how important well-being is to that process as well. You know, those things really stood out, I think, quite a bit. And just this idea of like how to include students in the process, either as they were going through the course or even just like immediately finished it, reflecting back on it, what was valuable about what you learned, and how dynamic it could be, like changing a course even 2 years in, if necessary, right? Like coming back, let's recall some of this. We wanted to shift this around.
Yeah.
It just really helped to emphasize how dynamic the IB still can be.
Yeah.
Because I think when they started out, they were this small, progressive organization that was really easy to maneuver. And now they're like this giant ship going through the ocean. And it's like, you want to turn course, that's harder.
Yeah.
But they're still dynamic. They're still responsive.
Yeah.
And the other thing I really loved about that is it's really paving the way for how the IB is pushing on the door of universities, as opposed to the other way around, where it was like universities kind of set here's the bar, here's the requirement. So you do all your soft skill training and all that sort of stuff. Doesn't matter. Like you still need to do an exam, and that's going to show us what we know. Yeah. But really, she highlighted all the ways in which there are many universities now that are like, we value that style of thinking. We like the development of soft skills, and how that's now really redefining the entry to university in some ways. It made me super excited for the future of the IB.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, cool.
My computer battery is dying.
Okay, let's pause. We then had like one of our first special bonus episodes, which was with Rachel, and she was talking about the new psychology course. And so for those of you who are doing the psychology course, I think that was a super useful episode of like how to approach it in a positive way. Yep.
I agree. And I think the one thing that I liked about it was not just the focus on the new teachers, where it's always easy to be like, the veteran teachers will be fine. It's the new ones that we're in. It's like, no, the veteran ones also need to relearn how to teach this course. Because I think that if you just add on the concepts or just adapt slightly, then it's a really big missed opportunity of what we were saying that Fidelis and her team are working on, of like, they really do want to change this course. So if you just look at like, how do I do the bare minimum changes, you're really missing some of the heart
of the point.
Why they made the changes.
Now it's cool. After that episode, I spoke with our psychology teacher, and it just sort of organically came out that we were talking about like, how are we going to get through the context, the concepts, the content, and these case studies? Like, now I got to do these. And just, fresh off of that conversation with Rachel, I was like, what about like framing it around the case studies? I was just talking about this. And then the next day, our psychology teacher came up to me and she's like, I got it figured out.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. And it was this idea of like, okay, frame the whole teaching through your case studies. And that really allows like the concepts, the context, the content to really come out throughout the whole thing. So I thought her advice on that was really useful. And we took it into action right away.
Yeah.
Which
super
was nice.
Cool. Yeah.
Conrad.
Yeah.
It was like celebrity status as well, right?
Same,
so many people wanted to talk about Conrad. I remember going to one of his keynotes at an IB Global Conference and just walking away being like, this guy's got some good ideas.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I also think it's cool to see somebody who does something quite radical, but actually does it, doesn't just talk about it, of like, wouldn't it be nice if we
like
could
me?
have if we could have a learner passport? It's like, no, we have a learning passport. We're doing it. And I think that his school and the school group has obviously like a really great reputation where they also, like the IBO, we're talking to universities about what we're doing, and we are at the forefront of these changes. It's not just, okay, we care about soft skills. It's no, we're putting this at the forefront because we believe that the current system is broken and we're doing something about it.
Yeah. That emphasis on competencies and how you can develop those competencies in multiple ways. It can take place in the classroom, but it doesn't have to. So you kind of get this idea of like a CAS portfolio just expanding quite a bit and really letting students evaluate on like, no, but in this scenario, I actually do communicate really well, or I am a great collaborator in this bit. I had to do leadership in this thing. And so it really allows every experience to be valued. Whereas you can see where like an old model of how to get into a university, for example, or how to be recognized by a company can be so limited if you're just coming down to like, what was your degree and what were your grades and that sort of thing. But this idea of the learner passport really emphasizes how much we can value from a student. And I think that just brings so much more to the table in terms of like well-being of young people, because you're now recognizing more than just their grades. You're recognizing far more than what they might do in a specific classroom setting. And those things, I think, help any young person feel seen. And when they feel seen and hear my strengths, and you're calling out my strengths, you're talking about my strengths, what a powerful thing that we got going with that. And I really hope that learner passport takes hold. And you can see where that, in conjunction with some of like the development that's happening in the curriculum of the IB, this can all lead to some really exciting things coming up in the future of education.
Yeah, definitely. I think even if for you guys, I don't think you're setting up a learner passport right now, but I think there are some stuff that you have done differently since then.
Definitely. I mean, since that conversation, we happened to be in a review of our assessment and reporting policy.
Oh, okay.
And as we were looking at our assessment and reporting policy, it just helped having that conversation in my mind, because I went back and I was like, well, wait, how does our assessment and reporting policy actually achieve our mission? And when we talk about our mission, we're trying to like draw out young people's strengths. We're trying to help them become lifelong learners. Like, does our reporting process do that? Does our assessment process do that? And while we couldn't create the whole, the donut of the learner passport that is present there, we started to look at better ways we could have students reflect on specific areas. So we say, like, let's start with a reflection on learner profile attributes, and then let's start with a reflection on your approaches to learning. And these are going to be the key things that we're focusing on throughout this.
Yeah.
And you can draw upon any experience that you may have had as well. So really having the students be like effectively the main authors of their report, obviously with quality control and that sort of stuff, but it just shifted a little bit more to help students become more autonomous. And a lot of that came from that conversation with Conrad, for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, which was useful.
Yeah.
We spoke with David Diada, one of my favorite authors.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that was on your wish list. You're like, I have 2 of his books. We got to talk to him.
I want to talk to this guy.
Yeah.
No, it was really cool. And I'm so glad that David agreed to chat with us. I think what really stood out there was like challenge assumptions.
Yeah.
Challenge the assumptions that might say, oh, well, direct instruction, that's a bad thing. Or a teacher-led classroom, that's a bad thing. And I think what was really useful is that it just reminded us, like, ask why. Just because it sounds like a student-led classroom is better doesn't always mean that it is.
Right.
And you really got to think intentionally about, like, why am I doing this thing that I'm doing? And maybe direct instruction isn't a bad thing. It's just the way in which you're delivering direct instruction.
Exactly. It's like looking at the 2 things where it's so easy to be, if you want to maybe sound like a progressive teacher, you're like, oh yeah, I don't do direct instruction. All of my classroom is student-led learning. We have a lot of episodes that talk about a lot of the benefits of student-led learning.
Right.
But if your direct instruction sucks, he says you're just lecturing. It's like direct instruction itself is not bad.
Yeah.
It's
fast paced, it's dynamic, it's got students involved. You're pitching to them often.
Right. Like sometimes there's a time and place for that.
Yeah.
But then it doesn't mean that all student-led instruction is good, because if there's not the right structures in place and the right boundaries and frameworks and things like that, it's like then you could end up in really useless situations.
Useless situations, right? Where you're like effectively wasting your own time, your students' time as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it was just like, good intentions have to be supported with good evidence.
Yeah.
And you can't just like, this sounds good, therefore I'm going to go with it.
Yeah.
And I think that was a really positive reminder for any educator to just go like, yeah, what am I doing and why am I doing that?
Yeah.
And am I just jumping on this bandwagon without really thinking it through?
Exactly.
Yeah, which was... Yeah, it's good. Ultimately, we need that.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we need that stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. Talk about Matt's episode. We're talking about like future of assessment with the IB.
Yeah. And we're going to work with him at the global conference again too. So
season 2. Season 2 is coming up, and we're talking with Matt at the IB Global Conference. That'll be fun.
Yeah, exactly. He was such a joy to talk to. And there were so many parts of it where I'm like, I'm going to make everyone in Cognity listen to this episode. I'm like, we need to be on top of this, because I think that, one, he did a really good job of being like, this is not as scary as it sounds.
No need to be scared about online assessments, right?
Yeah.
E-assessments, we're going to be good. And it's actually so much more positive.
Yeah,
We're going to have a better understanding of what a student knows. We're going to know like just a little bit of adaptive assessment right at the start, it helps us know like this student actually knows this amount, and therefore you get a better understanding of what they know, which is ultimately what assessment should do.
Yeah. You're just happy you don't need to put the assessments in the safe anymore.
Actually, seriously. And we spoke quite a bit about that with like the ecological impact as well. Just like mailing paper assessments, writing through paper assessments, mailing them back, the cost that comes with all this sort of stuff, the printing, all that. And it's not to say like, oh, everything's going to be green when we go online. Obviously, you still have power costs and that sort of thing. But it's just like there's an ecological improvement. There's a security of the exams improvement. And DP coordinators don't have to walk around with like keys to the safe every morning. You were a little unwell during exam season. Honestly, it's, I remember you guys were like, hey, can we do an episode? And I was like, it's exam season. Don't talk to me.
Exactly. So, no, hopefully it makes things better for schools too. But I think some of the things that I was most excited about is like how much we were talking about it in David's too, of like, the alternate reality of the exam. It's like, okay, this is how we teach all year long. And then all of a sudden we're going to go into this magical exam room where everything's different and we need to like pretend like the real world doesn't exist for this like
this niche
thing that also happens to be the most important test that you're taking of your life thus far.
All those things you learned, great. But can you tell me in this 2-hour session?
Exactly. So being able to make it a holistic or a part of your holistic assessment seems so much easier with moving into digital exams, and also the kind of potential that we can use AI for in assessment. All of that, just I'm like, this is what Cognity also really is about is being able to like, how can teachers make better informed, data-driven decisions in their teaching? How can we use formative assessment to help with learning, not just exam prep? And it's like when it all is in the same ecosystem, it all just makes so much more sense.
Yeah. I could see where you'd like be going around to the team afterward and like, look, we spoke about assessment. E-assessments are coming up. This is why we want to like move this forward in our product design and what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, even it's something as silly as right now with exam style questions, it was always like, okay, with exam, like in Cognity, it's like now everyone needs to go and write on paper because they need to practice writing. And that would be how they would do it. And then it's like, but if we bring everything back and we have everything be together and the summative assessments working with the formative, it just makes it so much more powerful.
Yeah, it makes me excited for the rollout of the e-assessments. And I know like, obviously we're going to start with ones that are a little bit more accessible, like the languages and that sort of thing.
Yeah, he was like, talk to me in 3 years about math.
Yeah, exactly. So, but ultimately I hope that any educator listening to that episode went away feeling better about where we're going with this, because I think it's a really positive direction. And ultimately, when I think of all of season 1, what we were able to accomplish here, ultimately, I feel more excited about being an educator in the IB and the future of the IB. I think it's a really responsive and dynamic space where they're listening to researchers, they're moving things forward in a positive way. And it's just been really cool to be a part of this podcast, to host it, to talk with these really cool people and to share these people with our audience and help people see like there's some really positive things going on in education and we can grow quite a bit as educators. And here's just a cool medium for us to engage with each other, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's been a lot of fun. I've gotten so much out of talking with the different guests. I agree. It's fun to be able to get these different perspectives and hear what other people are doing. And because people are doing really great things.
People are smart, right?
They are.
Smart people out there.
Yeah.
Let's talk with more of them.
Yeah.
Which, of course, we're going to do. We got season 2 coming up here. So season 1 was tons of fun. We got to speak with some great people. We hope you enjoyed all of that. Stick around because season 2 is coming up. We've already got some amazing guests planned. I won't name drop right now, but there's a few where I literally jumped up and down for a little bit. It was pretty exciting.
So thank you so much for everybody who's been listening this season. We hope this has been as fun for you as it has been for us. As always, if you have ideas of who you want us to talk to or any kind of topics that you really want us to go into, please let us know. You can go to cognity.com/IB Unplugged and let us know, and we will hope to be able to make it happen.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.
IB Unplugged is a Cognity podcast hosted by John Patton and Courtney Marline and produced by Catalina Gaffney. Be sure to subscribe or follow and share with your fellow IB educators. If you'd like to submit a topic, request, or question, please do so on cognity.com/IB Unplugged. Let's keep the conversation going and support each other in teaching with confidence, creativity, and joy. See you next time.